When Dark Shadows hit the air, there really wasn't anything like it at all. Most of the soap operas were set in small little Midwestern mythical communities, very contemporary feel for the times with the characters and the problems and issues that they faced. And Dark Shadows came along presenting this formula that was kind of this gothic murder mystery romantic kind of thing that was very, Daphne du Maurier, with the Bronte sisters thrown in, Rebecca, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, those kind of films from the 30s and 40s were, I think stylistically what the show was going for. And there was absolutely nothing like it on the air. That didn't mean that the audience responded to it, however. It was in I think a tricky time slot, because the late afternoon time slots for the soap operas were historically at that point a little more difficult for capturing the audience, who pretty much had been watching soaps, pretty much all day long. And it was very difficult then, as it is now, to get audiences to embrace a new soap opera, to take on that, 5-day-a-week habit when you're probably already watching, one or two or three others. It was very, very difficult. So there wasn't enough in Dark Shadows to attract the audience at first. But as the months went on, we started seeing some spookier, more supernatural elements come into the show. We started seeing ghosts. We had the character of Laura, who was quite literally a phoenix, would rise up once a century, I think it was, and lead her children into the flames of doom. And it took off at that point. To a degree, an encouraging degree, from where it started. But it wasn't really until Barnabas Collins came in, the character played by Jonathan Frid, which was almost about a year into the run of the show, that Dark Shadows really took on its identity and really began to pull in the audiences, and particularly the young audiences, which at that point were not the key demographic that producers, I think, expected to win with a soap opera. Soaps were created for the at-home mom, certainly at a time where there were millions and millions and millions of them. But that idea of capturing the young audience, which today is all anybody wants to capture, was pretty wild and crazy thinking in the 60s. But in fact, Dark Shadows did that, and after a while, it became the top-rated among the young women, which is the very demographic today that people kill to get. Well, the introduction of Barnabas Collins was very interesting, because here you had an actor who was totally unknown to American audiences, Jonathan Frid, and a brooding, introspective vampire. We'd never seen anything like that. There was a sensual undertone to his characterization and a mystery that was immediately appealing to seemingly women of all ages. I mean, he transcended the other actors of the time who either appealed to older audiences or younger viewers. Everybody dug Barnabas, and it presented and I think it was very profoundly innovative for its time, the idea of the troubled vampire. We'd never quite seen anything like that. Years, of course, later, Anne Rice made a total career out of this kind of storytelling, but for its time, we certainly had never seen anything like that. So there was that kind of intrigue. And interestingly, despite the fact that he was a vampire, he still sort of played into the classic romantic leading man that had always been popular, going back even before television to the motion pictures. He was a classic leading man. Maybe didn't have the classic looks exactly, but there was an offbeat appeal that people found immensely interesting and he brought audiences to the show. I don't think that there's ever been an example quite like that in daytime drama. Most characters that take off have, I think, a bit of a slower career trajectory. It's not, it took a while for General Hospital fans to get to know Luke Spencer, for example. But this was, an immediate across the board's acceptance that there had never been anything like it at the time. One of the interesting things about the success of Dark Shadows is, even though the show eventually took on great supernatural elements to it, is it did always stick to the classic, tried and true elements of drama that appeals to audiences, and we're talking going all the way back to when the Greeks invented drama. It was hugely, hugely romantic. It was just different. We were seeing, especially as the show went on, and the boldness of the supernatural storytelling, I think, really took hold, and you started seeing stories about time travel and parallel universes, and we started getting witches and werewolves and all kinds of things there. As wild as it got, it never forgot the real reason that people come to soap operas, certainly back in the 60s and 70s, which was for fantasy and romance. It was just dressed up differently, but it still fed the tremendous female viewers' need for love stories, for the mysteries and the intrigue. It paid off in spades by just dressing it up differently in a way that nobody had ever seen before.